Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday. What day is it? June 5th, 2019. I'm your host, Shawn King. This is show number 1216, joined as always by my lovely, gorgeous, beautiful wife, Melissa. Melissa!
Hi, all.
How are you?
I'm good.
Cold.
It's cold.
It's stupidly cold
It's
here.
ridiculous.
It's like 15 degrees.
It's June 5th.
50 degrees, which is, normal for Canada, but not in June.
I know what I did today. I had to put on my Ugg boots, which look like roadkill. Like they're so gross. And it's June, and I had to put on my Ugg boots.
Not pretty at all. Tonight on the show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Big news, obviously.
Dave asked, did you put on the long undies? I didn't put on my long underwear, no, but it was a long underwear day.
Dr. Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Today, this is WWDC week. Monday was the keynote. Monday night was the Loop Bash. Hopefully some of you got a chance to go there. I watched a really interesting video this afternoon. So the keynote was on Monday morning, and then Monday afternoon, there was basically the developer keynote. It's called the State of the Union, where some other folks at Apple come along and tell the developers even more detailed look at things. And that was interesting. I only understood about 10% of it, but there's some interesting stuff in there. We'll talk to Jim about that. We'll talk to Melissa about that because there were some things at WWDC that she's interested in. We're also going to talk about the Mac Pro, the insanity of the Mac Pro, the reaction to it from any number of ways, good, bad, and different. The $1,000 stand, the $6,000 monitor, it's all nuts. It's all crazy. We'll talk about that on the show. And we'll have another segment of I Have a Question with Melissa. And then in our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about shooting in challenging light. I had someone in one of my classes a couple of weeks ago ask me about a particular lighting setup that she was trying to shoot. She couldn't quite capture it, and I'll tell you what she was trying to capture and explain why she couldn't do it, because she's a beginner. And the idea is basically that there's sometimes you just have to look at something and go, nope, can't get that shot.
That's right.
And just move on.
Just enjoy it, whatever it is.
She wasted like half an hour at this location trying to get this particular light shot, and there was no way she had the skill level, the equipment, the tools to do it. If she'd known that ahead of time, she could have looked at it and gone, oh, that's pretty, and moved on. We'll talk about that a little later on in the show. I showed a really interesting thing to Melissa on assistive technology. Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, you work with some kids, not all of them, but some kids who are, how did you describe it? Nonverbal.
Nonverbal. Mm-hmm.
Kids who, for whatever reason, can't speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed you that assistive technology stuff. And was that interesting to you? Did you think that?
Oh, I think it's incredible. Wow. I love the way technology is opening up the world for people with disabilities.
The school board here in the Sunshine Coast is all Macintosh, right?
All of it.
So is all your assistive technology Macintosh based as well?
Oh, compatible with, no, a lot of specialized augmented communication devices are like thousands and thousands of dollars, and I don't think they're Mac or whatever. They just are compatible with.
They're self-contained?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not running on a computer like a Mac or a PC. They're self-contained in and of themselves.
Well, but you can access Word through them if you want to, and things like that.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, from what I understand, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like, don't ruin my zap straps.
Sorry, that's a little.
It seems that Apple does a better job than most when it comes to assistive technologies, at least in certain fields. They could be doing better. You had an interesting question. For those folks who watched the keynote, they showed a gentleman, my apologies, I don't know what his name is. He's obviously a quadriplegic, maneuvering around in his wheelchair through was that a puffer interface? that the guy in the wheelchair was using?
He was moving his chair with a puffer device.
Okay.
Yes, he had a high spinal cord injury.
So he would have been paralyzed from the base of the neck down.
Oh yes,
Or at least-
and because usually what they do is they look and say, well, how are you going to access your wheelchair the best? And obviously for him, it was through his breath.
And using voice control, they demoed how he could control his Macintosh and his iPhone. And as I said, I watched the developer part of this seminar, the Monday afternoon one this morning, and they made a really interesting point that if you're going to do that, and you should, developers have to now start adding things behind the scenes. For example, when they showed a travel app and there was a map, and below it said the word San Francisco, a graphic of San Francisco. So the demonstrator did what the guy in the wheelchair did, said show grid, and the numbers popped up. And he said San Francisco. And it should have come up with the San Francisco graphic. But because the person who coded the app didn't put in what's called alt text, alternative text, the app didn't know what that image was. The name of it was image 4. But if you're blind, you can't see that's image 4. You think that's going to be San Francisco or a city or whatever it might be. So developers have to start remembering people who access their apps in ways that are different than
Alternative ways. Mm-hmm.
You have to start adding these things too. It would have been a simple matter for whoever did that app to do the alt text of San Francisco,
Right.
or city, or whatever
I
it was
see.
they were trying to get across. The other aspect of it was they showed in much more detail how that assistive technology would work. And Melissa had a great question of what happens if you are, like you said, nonverbal. You can't speak. That's of no use to you.
Mm-hmm.
But you have one. They're not patients. They're not clients. They're not
Well, they're clients in healthcare.
Clients?
We don't call them patients anymore.
student, Sarah, who what does Sarah have? Sarah is cerebral palsy.
She has cerebral palsy, and she's nonverbal.
Nonverbal. But
Yep.
great with the computer
Oh,
and
she's
the iPad.
literate.
and
It's unbelievable how her literacy is.
when I first met Melissa and started posting stuff on Instagram, this person popped up on Instagram making comments on my post, and she was funny, and she messaged me a couple of times. I wrote her back, and it wasn't until probably 3 months later that I said, "Who's this Sarah person?" Melissa told me that she's nonverbal in a chair.
Mm-hmm.
So you were asking me about, would that voice assistant technology work with a Stephen Hawking-like device, an electronic voice?
Electronic voice.
And this, I hate when this stuff happens. So I asked the interwebs in general. I said, does anyone know, hi Apple support, this is on my tweet, if voice control in iOS 13 would respond to electronic voice for those who are nonverbal? Would someone with a device like Stephen Hawking had be able to use it? Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Directed to Apple support. Apple support said, hi there, Shawn. We're very excited about the accessibility updates in iOS 13. To learn more, tap here. Okay. So I tapped the website they want me to go to. The website doesn't answer the question. I hate when online tech support does that. Go here. No. It's a yes or no question. You either know the answer or you don't know the answer. Don't say go here when here doesn't answer the damn question.
Siri does that.
Oh, yes, she does. And it pisses me off because you just wasted my time making me read all this stuff on the webpage trying to find out whether or not the information I'm looking for is actually there.
Is it very new? Because I noticed it's at the developers conference. So is that very new, all this? Maybe they don't know yet.
No, I think this level of voice control is. This very specific voice control, I think, is new. And if that's the case, that's fine. Say that. We don't know. We found out about this when you did. We don't have any special Wouldn't have had a problem with that. Would not have had a problem with that answer at all. Matter of fact, someone stepped up and said, I kind of doubt they would know. You probably know more about iOS 13 than they do right now. Fine. Not a problem. And I said, agreed. In that case, the answer is we don't know. The response shouldn't be to send me to a website that doesn't answer the question, thereby wasting my time and pissing me off. Don't do that.
We don't know is often a good answer.
It's a perfectly acceptable, valid
I'll
answer.
say that easily to other professionals and to parents. You know what? I don't really know the answer to that question. What a great question. I do know that when we were setting up, when I pursued setting up Sarah's suite as a smart suite, that was one of my questions. I asked the because all this research is being done into it, and I said, will it respond to her electronic voice on her device? And the answer was yes, that it would. So Sarah can say, she can put in like a message that's ready for her, like turn on my lights or whatever, and it will respond to that. So
our friend and official Jew of Your Mac Life said, I bet it will work. As a test, I just had my computer's text-to-speech feature read a sentence, and my iPhone's dictation software transcribed it perfectly.
Okay.
Not the same software as what it will be in iOS 13, but caused me to expect it to work. Even if you have to train, like when we all set up Siri, we had to say a few phrases to Siri to get it to her to recognize our voice. So I got to assume the same thing would happen with Sarah. She would set up Siri, and then whatever phrases Siri wants you to say, she'd get her electronic voice to say those things.
Yeah.
I think that might work fine.
Because this wasn't there for Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, that's right.
Was it?
Dave D says, when I was a booth babe for IBM, we were explicitly told to never say, I don't know. It was always, I'll get back to you or talk to Joe over there. That's fine, too.
That's fine, too. I've often said, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out for you. I'll try as much as I can.
Saying I don't know, maybe other people do. I don't have a problem with that. You don't know. I don't expect you to know everything.
Not at all.
If I ask you what the phrase IBM stands for, and you say I don't know, then we got a problem. When we went to the Rolls-Royce dealership, we weren't buying a Rolls-Royce. We just went there to look. It was kind of cool, kind of fun with the boys. And so we go in, and I'm telling Melissa about the emblem on the hood of the Rolls-Royce. And I knew it had a name. I just forgot what the name was. I walked over to the receptionist and said, I know it's got a name, but what's the name of the emblem on the hood of all Rolls-Royces? She looked at me and went, I don't know. How could you not know that?
Pretty shoddy, huh?
It's the spirit of ecstasy. Everyone frickin' knows that. So annoying. Les Pose and the measure.
I agree with, yep.
Go ahead.
The
He's
measure,
a fellow Australian. So
yes, and I so agree. The measure of an expert is knowing what they don't know, but knowing how to find out. And that's why I hate any expert model of anything. I don't agree with it.
No.
No one. I mean, people know more than others, but they're never experts in it.
Monty, I don't know if it's an issue with someone saying I don't know. Too many corporate types think it's a bad thing. I don't know, period. I prefer I don't know, but I'll get you an answer.
Exactly.
Wouldn't have a problem with that either. Anything along those lines. But sending me to a website saying, as supposedly answering the question, they didn't say this will answer your question. They didn't say that, but they said go to this page.
Well, someone said it was a robot.
No, it's not.
That means that they're not building their capacity because they're not going, you know what, I don't know that. I'm going to go find out. So then the next person that asks, I'll know.
Folks, later in the show in our Starting Point Photography segment, we're going to talk about challenging lighting conditions and how you can both solve the challenges and sometimes just walk away from them. In our I Have a Question from Melissa. What is your question about this week, Melissa?
Oh, my question is about this new Mac Pro.
You want one?
I don't think I need one.
I didn't ask if you needed one. I said you want one.
Oh, no.
Good. We can't afford it.
And just about how Apple does their, I guess you would call it, consumer research.
Good question. We'll talk about that and more. And then up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening, whether you tune in live or in the archive. Talking now to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Hi.
You said you're on your third or fourth podcast or third or fourth beer?
No, third or fourth bar.
Bar! Okay. Which means your third or fourth beer.
Correct.
Okay, good. So I'm glad that I'm the only podcast you did today where you were sober. Or not sober.
Correct.
All right, good, whatever. WWDC was Monday. You were in the audience. I think we saw a couple of shots of you in the video. Overall, as always, I ask you what is your overall score or grade or feeling about 2019 WWDC?
You know what? The great thing about WWDC is not what the general public feels about it. It's how developers feel about it.
Yep.
And after I left WWDC, you know, the demos that Apple shows during the event are great. You know, they show iOS demos or macOS demos or tvOS, whatever it is, Apple Watch. And those are all fine, but those are customer-facing demos, and they do that to let customers know that there's cool things coming.
Yeah.
The real thing is when you talk to developers and see how happy they are about what Apple is showing them behind the scenes. And I've talked to a lot of developers this week, and they are all very happy. Which means that we're going to get some great apps in the coming months.
When you say they're very happy, are they happy about something specifically? The direction, iOS, macOS, whatever it might be?
So far, the people that I've talked to Mac developers, I've talked to iOS developers, and they're all very happy about what's there, what's coming, what APIs they're being allowed to use this year. So, I mean, this is a big thing for developers. So they're happy about all of the information that they're getting from Apple, and a lot of this stuff is under NDA, and they don't want to talk about it because they're not sure if Apple's really cool with them talking about it or not. But developers are happy, and when developers are happy, we get great apps. Regardless of the platform.
I think the thing that I saw that was most interesting to me was this. Apple kept hitting that privacy button. They kept mentioning privacy, privacy, privacy. And then when they started talking about the sign in with Apple thing, the poop didn't actually hit the fan until afterwards, and people started realizing what this meant. Did you see or hear from any developers that thought that was a bad thing, that particular aspect of privacy, that they were being, air quotes, forced to add that login details if they use Google or Facebook or Twitter login?
Okay, so here's what I heard. Developers use the Facebook or Google login thing because it was convenient. And they are thrilled to be able to add the sign in with Apple. That's the thing. They didn't do that because they believe in Facebook or Google. They did that because it was easy to implement and people could use it to sign in. But now that they can sign in with Apple, they're great with that. Nobody had anything bad to say about that option. Well, it's not an option, to be honest. I mean, so they were fine with it.
The issue that I had with it is that so much of the reporting on this seems to make it sound like Apple is forcing people to do this. They're not. As you said, Google's the developers choose to use the Facebook or the Google or the Twitter login. Apple is just saying, hey, we want in on that choice too because our choice is more secure. Developers, as you said, don't really care except from the point of view of it means one less thing for them to do, one less database for them to have to create or use. And the way Apple is doing it, I got to believe the folks at Google and Facebook and Twitter are going to be pissed about that because Apple's just taken away from them a huge data mining source for those companies.
Well, yeah, and isn't that what we want?
Exactly. That's right.
I mean, seriously.
No matter how much the tech media wants to portray this as being a bad thing. Oh, Apple's forcing developers to use this. Apple's forcing developers to put it on top of the row. Apple's forcing this is an antitrust thing, The Verge said. No, it's none of those things. This is
not.
The typical tech media tempest in a teapot where users are not going to care. The average person is not going to care. If they know about it and they see signing with Apple, they'll go, okay, I'll sign with Apple because we trust Apple more than anyone else. Any company that forces me to use a Facebook or Google login, I don't use their service. I don't use their app. I won't use their website. I don't do those things because I don't trust those companies. But with Apple, sure, I'll trust them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I will use sign in with Apple because they anonymize the email address.
Yep.
I still get it. I still get the information, but it's anonymized. When I want to stop it, it's stopped.
Yep.
Just
it goes
delete
away.
it.
It's not rocket science. This is a way of Apple protecting its users, and there's no one who's got half a brain who's going to complain about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other aspects of I was really surprised. I think my only real disappointment with WWDC announcements were when they talked about Apple TV having multi-user support. I thought, finally, we're going to get multi-user support in the iPad or the Apple Watch, and we didn't. That to me was my only serious disappointment. Did you have any disappointments from any of the announcements?
So I didn't really have any disappointments because let's take iPad OS. The fact that they broke out iPad OS to its own thing means to me that they recognize that iPad OS is somewhere between desktop and mobile.
Yeah. And
they need to do something separate for those customers. That to me is hugely popular. It's a big thing because we're going to start seeing some iPad OS only features. I mean, there are things that you should be able to do on iPad that you really don't need to do on iOS or
Yes.
the iPhone. So, viewing 2 Word documents, for example, how are you going to do that on an iPhone? You don't need to do that on an iPhone. So, but an iPad, yeah, definitely. On a Mac, you can do it. So why can't you do it on an iPad? That kind of stuff, to me, I mean, it's a sense that Apple is getting where people are going with the iPad.
I think, as was rightfully pointed out by several people, that right now iPad OS is 98% the exact same OS as you're going to get on your iPhone. But you're right. Very quickly, I think, within 6 months, we're going to see a significant divergence of
Yes.
those two OSs where, like you said, they're going to have specific features in the iPhone or in the iPad OS that you won't get in the iPhone OS, taking advantage of whether it's the larger screen size or more pixels or greater resolution or whatever it might be. And you'll see a definite divergence of the two OSs and the two devices, because it can still be argued for a lot of people, the iPhone as it was described, or the iPad as it was originally described, is still just a big iPhone. That's going to change in 6 months to a year, and keep an eye out for that.
Well, the iPad OS and the iPhone OS, or the iOS, I mean, you might as well call it the iPhone OS now. Remember back in the day, that's what it was.
It was called iPhone OS. Yep.
I get why they made the change, and I get why they made this change.
Yep.
For full-time iPad users, which I believe there are more out there than what we think. This is a big, big thing.
Yep.
It really is. It really is.
The idea of dark mode everywhere, does that do anything for you? Are you a dark mode user?
So here's the interesting thing about dark mode. Dark mode was something when I first installed Mojave, I switched it to dark mode as soon as I installed it.
Yep.
And didn't turn it back until today. Today, I switched it back to the regular mode. And it was actually pretty good. I enjoyed, the light mode, but I'm not sure what I'll do with iOS. I'm going to try both. So, was it a great thing? Well, yes. I do like dark mode, but I realized, because I work outside a lot, when I use dark mode, it's hard to see outside in the sun.
Sure.
So light mode is very easy to see. And, I'm going to have to see. I'm going to have to see what I like. I really am.
Yeah, I did the same as a lot of people when dark mode first came out in various apps. I tried it out. I have used it in my Twitter client at night when I don't want to disturb the wife, so I'll have the dark mode on Twitterific. But as a regular use thing, something I use every day on my iMac, on my desktop, I turned it on for a little while, then immediately turned it off because it just didn't do anything for me. And it might just be because I'm so used to the light mode that's why I haven't changed it on my iOS or my Mac OS. I think I've lost Jim. Oh, there we go. There he is.
Oh, I'm here. I tried to make it nice and quiet for you because I'm in a bar, but now I'm walking out of the bar.
Are you just bar hopping at WWDC? Have you lost poor Dave? Have you dumped Dave?
Oh, no, Dave dumped me.
I don't believe that for a second.
No, he did.
No,
he did.
What could Dave possibly be doing in San Jose? It's more interesting than hanging out with you.
He's going to a baseball game.
Oh, okay. Well,
for the AAA league or something. It's not even like the Giants. It's like the baby Giants.
The baby Giants. Thereby, they're completely exhausting your knowledge of baseball, isn't it? That's right there. That's everything you need. That's everything you know about baseball.
Yeah, that's all I know. It's all I need to know.
That's all you need to know. The Bruins are playing tomorrow night. So that's all you need to know. Mac OS.
Don't you even start with me on the Bruins, because I'm telling you, I've been at a bar since like 3:00. So don't you even start with me.
I got so many emails saying how offended they were by that last bit of our last conversation.
Were they now?
Utterly, completely offended that I would wind you up in that particular manner, that I should know better and not do those things to you.
I agree. I agree.
Oh, God. The another big announcement is the next version of the Mac OS. The Mac OS is undoubtedly the second most popular operating system that Apple does. A lot of little things there. This is very typical of what Apple's doing. I don't think we're going to see any gigantic moon launch steps anymore from Apple, but there were some interesting things in there. I like the idea of this sidecar stuff. They showed off what we were calling Marzipan, and now it's called Catalyst. This sort of dipping their toe in the waters of iOS apps and that connectivity along those lines. Was there anything in Catalina that particularly grabbed your attention?
You know what? I don't look at it necessarily as, here are some things from Catalina, here are some things from iOS, iPad OS. I kind of look at this as the whole ecosystem now. Here are all the things that you can do if you own an Apple device or multiple devices. Yep. And I think that's very important. And to me, that's where the big thing comes. When you're looking at, I have an iPad or an iPhone or both and a Mac. Well, here's all the stuff that you can do. And Apple's making that more and more easier. I mean, iTunes is going away. Thank God.
We're gonna talk about that after this segment, so hang on to that for a second.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of things, and even Apple knew how bad iTunes was. They were making jokes about it. What else can we add to iTunes?
A calendar
and
email.
Apple, rightfully so, over the years has added a ton of stuff to iTunes, but it's time.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. It's time. It's got to end, and it did end. So I'm happy about that. I really am.
And I think iTunes ended in officially it not ended. It's still available on Windows. It's just being broken up into separate apps. Any of your content isn't going to change, so you don't get to panic with that kind of stuff. But this was a fairly elegant way of Apple doing this, acknowledging that it's become this big old hairball of an app that isn't. It is no longer a small, simple app that does one or two things. It did everything. So Apple is splitting that up. And I like this process. I like separating into music and podcasts and TV, showing how important those things are. There was never any need for us to be doing backups in iTunes. I like the fact they moved that off to the Finder. My biggest issue that they're never going to bring back is the ability to buy things from the App Store through iTunes or through an app on my computer. I keep having to go to the App Store to buy stuff, which is a minor little annoyance for me. But otherwise, the death of iTunes, I'm not going to shed a tear for it. It was a great app when it first came out, and we all called it iCrack because we bought everything off of it. But it did get bloated, and it was time for it to go away.
Yeah, and there is nobody on the face of the earth that will argue that point with you. Nobody.
Oh, no, there are lots of people. There are all kinds of people.
Come on.
Go ahead and bring this up with Binky on Twitter, but get ready for a tweet storm while he tries to browbeat you into believing that what you think is wrong. That's always fun.
Well, no, I'm not putting up with that.
Yeah, no kidding. Neither do I. I think that the other thing I really like about what was announced in Catalina is this idea of even more so of handoffs and those kinds of things where you can be working on your document. You know, you're in a coffee shop or you're out in your back deck and you have your iPad and you're working on a document, and then when you come into the office to your iMac or to your big screen, you can hand those things off and keep working on it right there. That kind of
Right.
connectivity and that kind of smooth functionality between things, I think is just fantastic. I wish I did more of that stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we really want, isn't it? We want to be able to start working on stuff and be able to take whatever it is that we're working on anywhere we go.
Yep.
You can take it to your iPad or your iPhone or, you know, whatever, your Mac, whatever. We just want that flexibility.
It's this wonderful idea that I don't know that any other company has really grasped of allow the user to do their work on any device that they want to do it on. Don't force the workflow to a device. Make the workflow work no matter what device the customer happens to be using at that particular time.
Exactly.
You know, if you're sitting on the train going into work, maybe you can mark up a document on your iPhone. Then when you get to work, you can open that same document up with those markups on your Macintosh. Or at lunchtime, you're working on a project for your local church newsletter. You're doing that on your iPad that you can then send off to someone. I love the way Apple does this.
Yes, and the fact that you can take a web page and on the iPad and just move the pencil up and it makes this whole editable document.
Yep.
You know, that's great. That's great stuff. Of course you would want that.
There's not a lot that Apple did wrong on this particular WWDC, regardless of some idiot at App Advice. This was the worst keynote Apple had ever done, and that guy just needs to be punched in the throat. Please, if you see him at WWDC, just kick him because he wasn't watching the same keynote that the rest of us did. Now comes the actual hard work. The moment Apple, Tim Cook said, "Thanks everybody," and the developers ran outside to start downloading stuff. Now comes the hard work from that moment through this week and into the next 6 months, or 3 or 4 months. Were there any concerns of developers that, you know, some folks got Sherlocked, the folks that Duet Display and Luna got Sherlocked, and, you know, okay, it happens. There's going to be some things that everyone isn't happy about. Did you hear about any unhappiness at WWDC?
So I actually talked to Giovanni, the lead at Luna Display.
Uh-oh.
And no, it wasn't as bad as what it could have been. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, obviously you're upset if that happens to you. I mean, if you're a company and you get Sherlocked at a dub keynote,
yep,
then, but it seemed like he didn't think he was as screwed as what people thought he was.
Well, they sell a dongle for $80. If Apple is able to give even 50% or 75% of the functionality of Lunar Display to users for free, that's going to kill your company.
Well, you know, we'll see. We'll see. I love Luna Display. I really do. I love the company. I love the people behind it. So we'll see.
For me, it was, I'm a big fan of Duet Display. It's a little kludgy. It's a bit of a pain in the ass. It has to be connected, wired to your laptop. So it's not great from that point of view. But I like the idea of it, even though I've got a big 27-inch monitor that I stare at. I'm a big fan of multiple displays. So a little sad for those guys, but you know they had a good run. It's, as Lunar Display says or Luna says they've been doing this for 5 years. So, $80 a pop for 5 years. Okay. Hopefully they got something, as Mosquito says in the IRC chat room. I hope Luna has something else in mind to work on, because I think they're going to need it.
Well, I hope they do too, because for the time when they came out with that, it was really innovative.
Yeah.
These are for people that don't know them. These are very, very smart guys.
Yep.
I mean, there are some smart people in the world, and the people at Luna are some of them. I will tell you that.
Let's move on. At least the most costliest announcement, Apple saved for last. And as I told you, Apple had to announce the Mac Pro at this WWDC. They confirmed my demands, and they did. And oh my God, I don't think anybody expected that machine. I honestly think, and tell me about the reaction in the room. I'm watching the keynote, and after the iTunes jokes, I thought for sure that Mac Pro was a joke. I thought for sure they were going to lift off this fake plastic lid and there'd be a whole different machine underneath it. The initial impression of that for me was, that is one butt ugly machine. How did you guys see it in the room?
Well, I mean, I saw it as obviously a cheese grater, but like a hyper grater.
Yeah, that's right.
But when you think about it, why not use that design? It worked.
Yeah.
It worked for years. So why wouldn't you do that? And that's what they did.
I just, the industrial design of the outside of it, to me, was too reminiscent of the cheese grater, so it's going backwards, which Apple tends not to do. The gigantic handles on it and the big ugly feet. There's no need for it to have those big ugly feet on it. They could have done something different there. But that's good, neither here nor there for a machine that's probably going to be under your desk at some design studio. So that's not that big a deal. But when they start announcing the specs of this, God, how many of us who are never going to be able to use this, even if we could afford it, just started drooling over this thing?
Of course.
It was obscene, the power of this machine.
Well, I mean, that is one of the...
I think Jim just got accosted by somebody. It distinctly sounded he may have just been groped. I'll wait a second to see if he comes back. But yeah, I firmly believe Jim just got felt up. Jim? Yeah, looks like Jim just got solicited. That's right. I think they may just be working on price right now. Jim? Alrighty, I'll give him a couple more seconds, then I'm going to have to call him back. Or is that a beer, or are you just happy to see me? All right, I'm going to call him back. How can you tell it's Wednesday? This is me calling Jim. Jim?
So I was yelling at you the whole time, I'm here. And then I realized that I had pushed the mute button.
Because all we heard was some woman go, hello.
Yeah, so I'm at a bar.
Well, we think maybe you're being solicited, and you were just negotiating price.
That could happen.
That could happen.
I mean...
Oh, Lord. So anyway, this only happens on my podcast. It didn't happen when you were at Gruber or with your Chuck Joyner podcast. It only happens on the Your Mac Life show.
Only on yours.
Only on mine.
I mean, I'll be honest, it really does only happen on yours.
Sad but true. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I've yet to figure that out. So the power of this thing was just utterly off the charts. Just when Apple's talking about 12 PCI slots or 6 PCI slots and 12 RAM slots and the fans and all that kind of stuff, you're thinking to yourself, dear God. And then the demo started, and you were the first person I thought of when that Logic guy came on and put, 500 tracks in Logic?
Oh, no, he had over 1,000.
Over 1,000 tracks in Logic? That was nuts.
Yeah, that was nuts. That was absolutely nuts.
What's the maximum number of tracks you ever put into Logic?
Oh.
And not had it bogged down?
Oh, my God. The maximum, I don't think I've ever bogged down Logic or Pro Tools, but maximum number of tracks, I mean, under 100 for sure.
And now remember, he was just showing off. They weren't actually putting that many tracks into this thing. But did it blow your mind that he was able to do that and the thing didn't stutter? It didn't make a dent in it.
Now, let's be clear that when I went to the hands-on, they were playing a demo of a track that was recorded at Abbey Road Studio. And in Abbey Road, they had one machine for the orchestra, one machine for video, and one machine for all the other instruments in Pro Tools. At the demo, they had those all into one Mac Pro, playing live with video on the screen. And it was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, just rock solid.
Rock solid. Not a blip, not anything. I mean, it was incredible to see.
I mean, half the stuff that they were talking about, I really didn't have a clue what they were. The supports configuration of 2 Radeon Pro Vega 2 Duo MPX modules. I don't have a clue what that is. It sounds cool. Sounds fast. Did you talk to any pros in film or music about the new Mac Pro? Did you get any sense from them about this thing, that this is something they were going to get, or were they going to think about it, or what was the sense of the pro community?
Well, I talked to people in audio, and yeah, they were thrilled with it.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, if you're gonna proxy some like 3 machines to make one project.
Now, explain to the audience that they didn't explain this in the keynote. What does he mean by proxy when he said that?
Well, so you're basically putting multiple machines together in order to have enough power to run a project.
Okay.
Basically, there's more to it than that, obviously, but that's what you're basically doing. And in this situation, they brought it all down into one and played it on one Mac Pro. And let me be clear, I did not take this at face value.
Yeah.
Because I know what it's going to take to run some audio. And if you have great audio gear, I told the guy that was sitting there, scroll across. I want to see what plugins you're using.
Yeah.
And he said, sure. So he scrolled across. He's using Universal Audio top-of-the-line gear, the same gear that I use, that I know takes a lot of power. And he's using that same stuff. Now, to be fair, Universal Audio uses its own DSP, so it offloads from the CPU. But that's not the only thing that they were using on this project. They were using some built-in Pro Tools stuff. They were using all kinds of different things, even though they had the UA stuff available that they could offload the DSP. So, and the CPU was still fine.
Yeah.
It was just fine. No problem at all. And that to me was just amazing.
The pro community, when is NAB? When's the next NAB? January, February?
Oh, yeah, that's February, March or something like that. I don't go anymore.
Oh, really? Well, I was going to say, because that's the perfect place to see how audio pros are going to be using these things in the next 8 months, 9 months. So this is undoubtedly a powerful machine. Yes, I believe it's going to be the most powerful machine that Apple's ever produced. It's going to be in the upper, at least the middle, if not upper echelons of other machines, other workstations. This is not a computer per se. It's a workstation.
Right.
That being said, at $6,000 at the base price, probably the mid-range price is, let's say, conservatively between $12,000 and $15,000. Is that a line for this machine? For this kind of machine?
Absolutely not.
No.
What people need to understand is that this machine is not for you and I.
That's right.
This machine is for a music studio, a movie studio,
Yep.
a 3D studio. You know, name it, studio at the end. That's who this machine is for. So if you're scared of the price, this machine is not for you, because Abbey Road will be sucking these things up like crazy.
Yep. Yeah.
And so will
go ahead.
So will the movie studios.
If the price gives you even slightly a bit of pause, this is not the machine that you're going to buy. This
Right.
is you'll buy an iMac Pro. You're not going to buy this thing. And I don't think Apple's going to sell any of the low-end ones. I think it's all going to be mid to high-end versions of this. That being
And
said,
they're going to sell a lot.
oh yeah, absolutely. And it's very funny. I saw someone talk about, Apple has lost the consumer, the professional market. They've all moved to whatever other version they have. And these people don't get the fact that pros use whatever the fastest thing they can get their hands on. If they moved from Apple to another workstation, they can just easily move whenever the projects are done back to Apple again. It's no big deal for these guys to move between operating systems.
Well, and let's not forget that a lot of these people don't upgrade their systems for years.
Yeah.
I mean, you get something that works in a studio, then you're sticking with it. So, I'm still on. I still on my music machine. I am a version behind on OS. Always a complete version behind.
Yep.
I mean, I'm nowhere. I haven't even upgraded to Mojave on my
Wow.
my music computer. Yeah,
That is behind.
I am a complete version behind, because all of my plugins work, all of my my audio workstation stuff works, everything works, and I keep it right there. Now, when when Catalina gets released, I'll probably update to Mojave.
Yeah.
But that's the way I mean, some people and some studios won't even do that. If everything is working, they're going to keep it exactly where it is.
Unless somebody can show them that this new stuff, whatever it might be, can save them money or make them more money by working faster, that's when they'll switch. If I can show you a return on investment where we buy 3 of these things for $20,000 a piece, and in 6 months, because of the time saving, because we've been able to pump out projects faster, we've made that money times 10 back, then you'll do it.
Right. That's it. I mean, I am always a full version of the OS behind.
Yeah.
Because I know I can go in at any time and record and mix and do whatever I need to do, and it's going to work. If I install Mojave or if I install Catalina right now, I have no guarantee that anything is going to work. And, for these places, time is money.
Yep.
If they're down for a day, holy shit. I mean, that's a lot of money you're losing.
And it's not just the money you're losing that day, but the guy who hired you, that you have to explain we can't get the project done, is now going to hire somebody else.
Right.
They're just going to move on to the next.
Yep.
The other thing that there's 2 more things that we're going to talk about. That display. I don't know anything about that high-level reference monitor. I've heard of reference monitors in terms of studio speakers, but this is the first time I heard of a reference monitor of $43,000 for a display. You guys got a chance to see those things in the demo room. Did it really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that display is made entirely for movie studios.
No.
It's not for you and I.
No.
You're not gonna see any big change sending email on that display that you will see on an iMac.
Yeah.
So if you think you will, just go buy an iMac and be happy with it.
That's right.
But if you're looking at pixels in an 8K movie that you're making, yeah, you're going to see it right there.
Yeah.
I mean, the reference monitors are HDR, but the reference monitors aren't Retina. And the reference monitors aren't this and this and this and all the features that Apple put into this monitor. So again, this is something that Apple puts out that is specifically for 3D, for photography, for movies. And if you're not looking for that level of detail, then don't buy it.
Yep.
But for the studios that are looking for that level of detail, then they are going to eat this up. They are going to buy that like it's the last monitor in the world. And that's how it's going to go.
These things are definitely living up to their name. This is a pro workstation for pros. If you're a hobbyist, it's not for you. If you're a prosumer, it's not for you. You must be a working professional high-end pro to buy this stuff. So don't bitch about the price. This is people bitching about the price of Ferrari when they can never afford anything more than a Toyota Corolla. This is not the machine for you. Yeah, I understand you want it, but guess what? You can't have the Ferrari. You can't afford it. You can't afford to buy this vehicle, this machine, and use it the way you want to use it. It's a waste of your time and a waste of your money. Now, that being said, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That being said, $1,000 monitor stand was funny as shit.
Yes, it was. Okay.
That just cracked me up.
I agree with you there. I mean, I don't have enough to buy the monitor, let alone the stand. I mean, yeah, that was a bit crazy.
And the reaction to it is even crazier too.
When they first said that, I was sitting in my seat saying, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, that's right. Say what?
So I gotta lay this on my desk or something. I mean, so here I talked to a few developers about this last night, and they said it's too expensive for me. I said it wasn't made for you.
Yep.
You know, in 2 years there'll be a prosumer version, and they said, well, why didn't Apple release that now? And I said, why? Because Apple's in a tight spot, and Apple backed themselves into a corner with with the trash can Mac Pro. They backed themselves into a corner. So they needed to come out with a truly pro machine.
Yes.
And they did. Now, what would have happened if Apple came out with another prosumer machine, which to me, the trash can was a prosumer machine.
Okay, fair enough.
It wasn't a pro machine. It was prosumer. If they had done that, the pros would have been all over them. So what did they do? They met it head on, and they just blew us away with this machine. And that's what they needed to do. So in 2 years, can they come out with a Mac Pro that is, less price? Maybe. I'm not sure that they will. But the display, I think that they probably will. Here's a display that's 27 inches instead of 31. And, it doesn't have all of the high-end features, but enough that if you want to buy it, it's $3,000. I can see that happen. So, what I think people bitched enough about the Mac Pro that Apple went full hog into developing a pro machine. Now that they did that, they're bitching about the price. Well, Apple didn't make that machine for you. because I can guarantee you that the music studios are not bitching about that price.
Yeah.
They see it and say, wait, I don't have to have 3 machines anymore. I can have 1 and do this. Yes, it's going to be expensive, but hey, I'm all in. The music studio, to be honest, probably won't buy the monitor. They'll buy the Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Because music, all I need to be able to see is the waveform to edit. You know, I don't need to see the high fidelity pixels and everything like that.
Yep.
But a movie studio, you think? I mean, they make what, $100 million movies or more. You think they're worried about the cost of a $5,000 monitor? No.
Yeah.
That display is going to be in every music studio as soon as it's released. And so will the Mac Pro.
I talked to a friend who does film editing professionally in one at Universal Studios. He said the monitor stand was a bit silly, but he's not worried about it because for the vast majority of the time, those monitors are either mounted to a wall or VESA mounted so that the monitor can be moved around to other people to be able to see the monitor. Yeah, I felt Apple should have just said the machine costs $6,000 and the monitor is included. Just add the price on, because no one would have. There would have been no difference in the complaint of the price of the Mac Pro if it was another $1,000, the price of the stand. By doing it separately and not explaining that maybe half their clients won't even bother buying the stand, Apple made themselves look a little bit silly on that. But it's a tempest in the teapot, and I don't think it really makes any difference.
You're not looking silly to the people that are going to buy it, though. That's the thing. So what people have to understand about that is that these monitors for movie studios are going to be mounted in a box, and that box is on rollers.
Yep.
And somebody's going to roll it up to a director or producer, lift open the flap. They're going to look at it and say yes or no. Then they're going to close the flap and roll it away to somebody else.
That's right.
And that's how it works. That's how it's going to be. You know, there's going to be one guy looking at it who says yes or no. Then they've got, 5 or 10 other of them on that shoot that other people are going to look at and say, well, I didn't like this part of it. And then they're going to reshoot it, or they're not. I mean, that's how this works. It's not made for you and I to check email.
That's right.
Or even to write code. Now, is it going to be great to write code with? Absolutely. But do you need that monitor to do it? No. I mean, and chances are they won't even need that mount. The studios, they'll just, stick it in this box and it's going to be screwed in some crazy way, and they'll just move it around as they need it. That's the way that this stuff goes. And that's why music studios don't need it, because they either have a monitor built into the board, or they just do not need that level of detail to make shit work in a music studio.
I love the fact that Apple came out with this device, no matter what it looks like. The power of it is going to be insane. I'm really looking forward to seeing various benchmarks. Apple has some on the website, but I'm looking forward to seeing real world stuff. But I always believe that Apple needs to have an aspirational machine, something that is out of the reach of the majority of us, things that we can dream about. The trash can wasn't really that Mac Pro. This is definitely a machine you can dream about, even though you're never going to get it. Like, I dream about Ferrari all the time. Ferrari just announced the new Stradale, and I'd kill tens of people to get my hands on a Stradale. I'm never going to, but I can still aspire to it. And that's what this machine is. It's an aspirational machine I think Apple needs to have in their lineup. So I don't think they're going to come out with, in 2 years' time, the Mac Pro Lite, a smaller version of this or the monitor. I think they're going to keep this form factor for another 5-10 years, add more stuff to it, but the price is still going to stay at a base level of $5,000-$6,000.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised with an Apple Pro Display prosumer version.
Possibly, yeah.
That I wouldn't be surprised with. But the Mac Pro, I think, like you said, they're going all in
Yep.
on a Mac Pro.
Speaking of all in, we don't know yet, but at some point, someone's going to either buy or spec out the maximum amount of stuff that you can put into a Mac Pro. We'll find out in the fall what that is going to be, what that price point is. What do you think? Give me your guess as to what a fully maxed out Mac Pro would cost.
75 to 1.
$75,000
Yeah. To 100 grand.
to 100 grand? Oh, wow, that's high. That's I was guessing about 50,000. That a completely maxed out machine would be $50,000.
I think you could pay that in RAM.
Well, Apple's RAM, yes.
No, I mean, I think you could pay that in memory alone.
Yeah.
I think 1.5 terabytes of the memory that could come with that computer would be about 40 grand.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see.
So I'm thinking maxed out all the way, everything that you can get. I'm thinking 75 to 100.
Congratulations on the Loop Bash. I saw a bunch of great Twitter stuff on it. It was another fantastic show you put on with the Silicon Valley House Rockers. So congrats to you for pulling that one off. And just to let everyone know, the NHL Stanley Cup Finals are 2-2. So now down.
Don't be an asshole again this week.
It's now down to a best-of-3 final for those folks who aren't familiar. They play 7 games. It's 2 games for the Bruins, 2 games for the St. Louis Blues. As I predicted, it's going to be a 7-game series.
Well, we don't know that. The Bruins could win the next 2.
They're not
and
gonna.
be done with it.
They're not gonna.
Why you got to be like that? Why? I took time out. I'm standing on a street corner in San Jose to help you out, to try and talk to you and bring some intelligence to your dickhead commentary, and then you got to do this to me. Why you got to do this to me? You don't need to be like this.
Oh, next Wednesday night's going to be a lot of fun, Jim. Folks, we're talking.
Every night is a lot of fun.
We've been talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. His podcast is called The Dalrymple Report. He's whoring himself out to everybody at WWDC this week. He was on some podcast with Gruber this afternoon. He's all over the place. So you'll see him just pop up everywhere for the next week. Thanks, Jim.
You're such an ass. You're such an ass. I don't even know why. Why do I answer the phone on Wednesdays? Why? I mean, you even asked me today, are you going to be sober when we do the podcast? And I said no.
No.
But I'm going to be there anyway. And then you got to treat me like this. Every Wednesday you find something to treat me bad about. Every Wednesday. And it just amazes me that I keep doing it.
Are you saying...
How long have I been doing this?
At least 10 years, if not 12.
No, it's more.
More?
It's more
15?
than that. Yes, it's more than that. It's like 15.
15
It feels like 50. Feels like
so
50
why do you
years.
keep doing it?
Because I like the abuse.
And
I
vice
don't know what
versa.
else to say. Thank you, Shawn.
Thanks, Jim. Have a good time at WWDC.
Bye.
See you, buddy. Yes, as I've often said, it's also part of his parole. He's mandated by law to be here each and every Wednesday evening. Because I got pictures of him with a goat. That's why. No, it's fun. Yeah, it's been 15 years that Jim's been on the show. He's been on, I was going to say, as long as I have. Well, duh. Yeah, frickin' dummy, of course he is. Folks, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the Mac Pro. Melissa has her question of the week. About the Mac Pro and why it is what it is, all that and more coming up. This is your Mac Life. God, that's just too damn funny. Too funny. Folks, this is Your Mac Life. Thank you guys. Oh, I got the blocking my dual voice. Still blocking it. So while I'm in there talking to Jim, you're flirting with some Australian?
Yes.
You don't even bother to deny it. Who insults me by calling me...
You're the pretty princess. Because you got princess balloon for your birthday, remember? It's the other Aussie's fault, Diana's fault.
Oh, dear. This is the I have a question segment with Melissa.
Oh.
Your question this week, madame?
Well, I guess it's sort of a two-part question.
Okay.
My first question is, why is this cheese grater so expensive? But the second question I have is about Apple, and because they're so, secretive, how do they do their consumer, feeling out what people need? Why have they come out with this thing? How do they know that it's what the world is waiting for?
Well, some of the things that Apple music is stolen. Thank you. That's fine. Sorry. Music's dead. Thank you, MacMan. Some of the things that Apple can fairly assume what people need. They always need more power. They always need more RAM. They always need more space inside the machines. So they can go from that common knowledge of everybody, whether it's your iPhone, your iPad, your MacBook Air. Everybody wants those things. That's common among everybody. How those things are delivered is different for each group. So, for example, Apple will deliver power in an iPad or an iPhone with their what's called the A12 chip. It's a smarter computer brain in it, so that gives you more power. But it's a small chip because it's a small form factor. You've got a small device. It's skinny. It's not as big as a big old desktop. So Apple knows that because they have the physical space, they can make the Mac Pro as physically big as they want to. It doesn't have to fit into your pocket. It basically has to not break your desk if you put it on top of it. So it can be freaking massive. So Apple knows they have a lot of space in there to put things for power, for actual physical power of energy that comes out of the wall into the computer, and then the power of the computer itself, the processor, the RAM, the video card, all that kind of stuff. So Apple can go with a bunch of base assumptions. But then you're right, Apple doesn't do any kind of focus group or that kind of stuff. They'll go to trusted partners at Avid and Pixar and Adobe and those kind of folks and say, okay, we're going to swear you to secrecy. Sign this NDA on pain of death, on pain of we'll never talk to your company ever again, and send us over a couple engineers or a couple of video guys, an audio guy, and we'll let them play around with this stuff. But remember, Apple also has their own pro apps, Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro. Those are apps that are internal to Apple. So they have their own guys who do this stuff every single day. So Apple would go to their guys who are working on Final Cut Pro and say, what do you need in a machine to make Final Cut Pro work better? Oh, God, we need better video cards. Okay, what's the best video card? It's this one. Apple says, okay, can we develop a better one than this? We have to buy it from somebody else. So that's the process that they would go through from that point of view. Why is it so expensive? A number of reasons. One is economies of scale. They know they're going to sell a lot fewer of these. So a company knows that we've spent this much money on research and development. They spent this much money on engineers physically building this thing, this much money on software engineers physically coding this thing, this much money on marketing, on advertising, all that kind of stuff. And now we also know we need to make this much money. For Apple, generally about 35% margin of the price is their profit. So when they do those calculations, they go, here's the number that we need this to be price-wise in order for us to make money off of it. So the price is kind of built into what they do. If they knew they could sell 1 million of these things, the price would come down. They know they're going to probably sell 100,000 of them. Apple's never going to tell us how many they're going to sell, but let's just say conservatively 100,000 a year of these things. So they know to make that money back and to make a nice chunk of change for themselves, this is the price we have to do this. The components cost this much. We have to buy these devices from these other companies, hard drives and SSD drives, and that because Apple doesn't physically make that stuff themselves. So they know how much it costs to put those things inside of it. Then there's the point of view of it kind of has to be a high price, otherwise you wouldn't take it seriously. If Apple made a Mac Pro, if they made a machine called a Pro, but it was only $500, you wouldn't take it seriously. It's not a Pro machine. $500 is not a Pro machine. Pros expect to pay stupid amounts of money for the Pro gear because they expect that Pro gear to do stupid amounts of things. If you watch the keynote, and I showed this to Melissa this afternoon, we talked about it with Jim in that segment, the guy doing the Logic demo with all those tracks in it. That kind of guy isn't going to blink twice at spending $25,000 in that machine. Because as he said in the demo, this was a thing where they would often have 3 or 4 machines networked together to be able to do this kind of stuff. Well, those 3 or 4 machines, they're each $5,000. You're talking $15,000 to $20,000. Well, now you can do that in one machine and do it faster and do it more efficiently. Those old timers out there, myself included, remember when we would do stuff in Photoshop back in the day, and you'd add an effect to Photoshop. You'd literally go add effect, enter. I'm going to get coffee, because you'd see the little spinning cursor, or in those days it was the little. Remember the hand, the little finger, doing that kind. You'd sit there and you'd count the fingers, and you'd sit there, and you'd go get coffee or buy a sandwich or do it overnight. In college, we would create Mandelbrot graphics. Those are the cool, funky graphics that the more you zoom into them, they stay the same. We would set up Mandelbrot sets at night, hit enter, go to bed, and 9 hours later it would pop out the graphic for us. Now those things are being done on the iPhone instantaneously. It's that kind of power difference, these things.
Hackman says, take a nap.
Yeah, take a nap, exactly. So if the demo that they showed on screen, I know everyone who uses Final Cut Pro, I've done it, where you're doing is color grading. So you shoot the video and then it's just not bright enough, or you need to change the color of it. The sun wasn't right, whatever it is. So what you need to do is you need to color grade or fix the color on that video. When you think about doing that on your iPhone or in Photoshop, you're doing it to 1 frame. But if you do that on video, you're doing it at least 24 frames a second. So if it's 10 seconds, that's 240 frames. You have to do that color fixing 240 times in only 10 seconds. If you've got 10 minutes, you multiply it out. And in Photoshop, depending on what you're doing, that color grading can take a few seconds, or it can take 30 seconds, depending on how involved the graphic is. You're doing that in video, you are exponentially increasing that. So you would do a color grade on 15 seconds of video. Again, you'd walk away. You could walk down to the next cubicle and talk to Jim and ask Jim what he's doing. And he was doing it live while the video was still played and not dropping a frame. There was no stuttering. There was none of this stuff. Every video editor out there went, I'll take 3. So you and I were talking about this afternoon. For us, $5,000 to $6,000 to spend on a computer without the monitor is insanity.
Oh.
How can Apple justify?
Well, I would rather do other things.
We all get up in arms over this stuff, but it's a cliche. But that's not the machine for us.
No, for pros, right?
It's for pros. It's like people bitching about the cost of tires in a Ferrari when they can't afford the Ferrari. It just, yes, that's a $100,000 to $200,000 machine that you're never going to buy. So why are you bitching about the price?
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with you.
Whereas the gentleman on stage to him, it's like, this is amazing.
Oh yeah, to that level of pro, they will be virtually lined up to buy these things come the fall and buy them in bulk. We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it to Jim, but Apple very quickly announced that these things will be rack mounted. And what that means is the guts of it, without the shiny metal on the outside, can be put into a server farm where there will be 15 of those things in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And the folks at Pixar, who have a massive, I've seen it, they have a massive render farm, just hundreds and hundreds of computers lined up so they can do their renders. They're going to start replacing those things and putting these things in a heartbeat. The folks at Mac Stadium, which is a server farm that you can put your stuff on, is going to be buying. They already buy hundreds, as I said, of the old trash can Mac Pros. They're going to replace those with these things as they need and be 10 times happier with them. So it's all about perspective. It's for the perspective of us average people who have an iMac or a MacBook Air or a machine that costs us $2,000 and we had to scrimp and save for it. Yeah, $6,000 minimum for a machine, $5,000 minimum for a screen is utter insanity. I can get a 32-inch machine from this company for only $300. Yeah, you can. It ain't as good as this one. So, but yeah, it is very interesting to watch people complain about this stuff. And Monty says, and he was doing it to 8K video live and showing 3 streams of 8K video. I think it was 120 million pixels on screen. This Mac Pro can drive six of those $6,000 monitors. Just the numbers were mind-boggling. It just this is going to be in this work class level of machine. This is probably going to be at least in the top 10% of machines of that genre. It's going to be amazing. In our starting point for Dogview segment tonight, I was teaching a class a couple weeks ago, and in a beginner DSLR class. I love teaching these classes; so much fun. And one of the ladies was asking about a location that Melissa and I had been to, Cliff Gilker. It's a lovely little park here, and by the way, people here in the Sunshine Coast have different versions of parks. I think a park as a lovely grassy area with a tree, maybe a squirrel over there, and you walk through the bucolic green, you look at some flowers. Your parks are hiking areas. Up and down, over hill and dale, and there's waterfalls, and there's stumps, and there's just uphills and downhills.
Bears.
And possibly bears.
Chasing the squirrels.
So Cliff Gilker Park is I don't know. I don't have that many parks. I don't know that many parks around here. But it's a lovely park. I like walking Cliff Gilker. There's several waterfalls there that are fun to take. What's the other park that you, me, and Damon went to with that big waterfall?
You, me, and Damon.
Where Damon flew the drone and took the pictures.
Not Smugglers.
No.
I'm so sorry. Which waterfall did we go to? Never mind. Another beautiful waterfall.
beautiful.
Oh, I know. Down that. Yeah. Never mind. Okay. Yes, I know where you mean.
So this lady was talking about walking through Cliff Gilker Park and seeing that spot where you and I saw the rocks. People had
Cairns
had piled a bunch of rocks onto some bigger boulders, and apparently she saw one of these rock formations, and it wasn't in a cave, but it was in a dark. There was a dark area behind it, and the sun was hitting the rocks in just the right way. And she said the problem she was having was that when she took a picture of the rocks, it was either blown out, the rocks part, and the dark part in the background was well lit, or the reverse, that the rocks were well lit, but it was just black in the background. You couldn't see any of the leaves or the trees or the branches in the background. And the problem she's having is something that's a little bit more advanced than beginner, but not quite intermediate, somewhere in the middle. As I always tell students, remember, you're always taking pictures of light. Light is the most important thing in your photography. You don't take pictures of dark. You take pictures of light. So you have to see the light, see the way the light works with things. Your camera sees a scene, and your camera doesn't know what you're shooting. It doesn't know it's a person or a rock or a tree. All it sees is light. And your camera wants to make everything average at 18%. So if you get yourself set on auto mode, your camera says, okay, I want this whole scene to be what's called 18% gray. So it'll tend to, if it sees a really bright spot, it has to balance it up by making a dark spot really dark. And vice versa. If there's a dark spot, it makes the bright spot really bright. So that's why when there's someone with the sun over their shoulder and you're shooting in their face, the sun is going to be a big white blob and they're going to be a dark blob because the camera's trying to make everything 18% gray. So you have to learn how to get off auto mode and shoot for the light. Now, one of the things that she could have done is just say, the hell with the background. What's important in my picture is these cairns in the foreground, and gotten in really close and taken a picture of the cairns, ignored the background. Mm-hmm. If she had shot with a very high or low aperture.
To bring in more light or less? To bring in more light?
To focus on just this one thing.
Oh, well, it would be less of an f-stop because she's only taking a photograph of that one thing.
So what should her f-stop number be? A high number or a low number?
A low number.
Correct. As I tell folks, use the aperture as closest to the number of things that you want in focus. So if it's one object, even though it's a bunch of rocks, it's one object, get your aperture down probably 3.5, 4.5. Get it down to the lowest number you can. If you're taking a picture of a bunch of people, make your aperture as close to the number of people, f8, f11, whatever it might be. So what she could have done is getting really, really close, shoot at a very low aperture number so that the background would be blurry and it wouldn't matter if there was a whole lot of light there. The other thing she could have done is our iPhones do this automatically. I'm not saying her iPhone could have gotten this shot, but there's this aspect of photography called high dynamic range. Your iPhone, if you've got it set that way, does it automatically, HDR. And what it does is when you take a picture with your iPhone actually takes 3 pictures simultaneously. What your iPhone will do is it will first expose for the bright spot, the highlight it's called. So it'll make the highlight perfectly exposed, or as perfectly exposed as the iPhone can get. But it'll make the mid-range light and the dark stuff darker. Then it will take a photo of the mid-range stuff. And it'll make the bright spot too bright and the dark spot too dark, but the mid bit will be perfectly exposed. Then it'll take a third photo. It'll make the dark bit perfectly exposed, but everything else won't be. And then it merges those 3 photos together quickly, milliseconds. You don't even notice it's happening, but it's happening in the background. So maybe her iPhone could have helped her solve this problem. Unlikely. The other thing she could have done is put her camera on a tripod and done her own HDR stuff. So what you do is you take your own 3 pictures and you expose for the bright area of light, you expose for the dark area of light, and you expose for the mid area of light. Take 3 pictures, 1 for each of those. Then in software, in Lightroom or Photoshop or any number of other bits of software, fold those together, layer them on top of each other, and you should get a perfectly well exposed photo. As MacMan says, you can get a polarizer filter or a neutral density filter, and all that is just another piece of glass that goes in front of your camera lens. A polarizer filter, and they're think of them as sunglasses for your camera lens. So it's a darkened piece of glass that screws onto the outside of your lens, and it's like a sunglass. A polarizer allows you to turn the sunglass. A regular ND filter is just a piece of dark sunglass type stuff over top of your lens. A polarizer can turn, and half of it will be sunglass and the other half will be clear, so you can turn it around. So what you would do is you would make the sunglass part down to the bottom. You'd expose for the dark stuff in the background, and then it would average out to be a nice picture. Another thing she could do is she could get more light into the dark area. You and I used it when Melissa has these beautiful dragon egg lanterns that we have, and she wanted to take a picture of them. And I said, let me get my reflector. And I got the big 5-in-1 reflector I have and used it to direct light. The eggs were here, the sun was there, and so I put the reflector here, caught the sunlight and reflected that way. Pictures came out quite nice. So she could have done that. She could have propped it up or had a friend direct the light into the back area there. She could have used a flash, not her on-camera flash. Her on-camera flash wouldn't have done any good. But flashes that come off the camera are called, surprisingly enough, off-camera flashes. Isn't that a clever name? And what happens is the off-camera flash, when you push the shutter, let me do this. Let me take it in this hand. When you push the shutter button, the flash lights up, even though it's not physically attached to the camera. So what I would have done is put the off-camera flash behind the rocks and pointed up to the dark spot, and then taken the picture. The flash would have lit up the dark spot, and the camera would have taken a picture of the foreground. Fill flash, yeah. And as Monty says, sometimes you just can't take a picture of that. And that's what I ended up telling her. All these things I just told you guys, when she asked me the question, I went through all those things in my head. Took me about 5 seconds. And then I realized, you know what? You're a beginner. You can't get this shot. You don't have the knowledge yet of how to manipulate light, how to change light, how to sculpt light in order to capture this image. This is an example of a picture where when you have the knowledge, especially of what you don't know, because we always assume, especially beginners, we assume, well, I've got this expensive camera. I've seen other people take these pictures. I should be able to take this picture. Well, no, because those people are doing other things, whether it's in post-production or with lighting or with whatever it might be, fancier cameras, whatever they're doing. But you think I should be able to do this. So when you gain a little bit of knowledge, you realize, oh, okay, this is a lighting situation I can't do anything about. What she might have been able to do is just wait for the light to change so that the cairns were darker, matching the background, and then your camera wouldn't have had such a hard time averaging out the light. So just patience. Or shooting from a different angle, physically moving around. But that's part of the problem of being a beginner, is you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that you need to see light and shape light and sculpt light in this way. And you get very, very frustrated. She spent like a half hour there. And it's the kind of situation where I would have walked up and gone, oh, that's really pretty. Nope, don't have the gear for this, and walked away. And not wasted a half hour trying to get a picture that I knew that she wasn't able to get. If you have any questions about this or anything else we talk about in Starting Point Photography, please send me an email to Shawn at startingpointphotography.com. You also go to the website at startingpointphotography.com. By the way, we've got a bunch of, not a bunch, we've got some stuff. They finally got them up on Amazon. The covered KUVRD lens caps that I absolutely love are now up on Amazon. If you go to our website at yourmaclifeshow.com, by the way, the website's up now, so you can go check it out. Shawn, at yourmaclifeshow.com, you can check out the link on amazon.com. If you buy one of these things, we get a bit of a kickback. So if you're going to get one, we'd appreciate it if you came to our site first and clicked through it. I've got, I think, 4 or 5 of these things that are on all my lenses, except this one. I don't know where the lens. It's right there. It's right there.
Next to the Zap Straps.
I think they're $15 a piece. And definitely,
awesome.
Definitely well worth it. So check it out, the KUVRD.com. We got an email from our good friend Maurice Chevalier. Whenever Apple announces these kinds of high-end machines, the old Mac Pro and the previous cheese grater and now this cheese grater, the first guy I think about is Maurice. Maurice is a geoscientist at the University of Calgary. He's got a buttload of degrees at UC, and when I wrote on the Loop in Sight story that I wrote about the new Mac Pro, I said Apple announced the new and hellaciously expensive Mac Pro and Pro Display XDR. Maurice wrote back an interesting comment. Well, that is not expensive given what you get. If you compare it to comparable workstations like the HP workstations, it's significantly cheaper. For a pro user, $10 to $30K is a great price. My first workstation back in the day, late 80s, was a Sun workstation, set me back $50,000.
Oh my God.
My second one was a MIPS 2030, which set me back $80,000. Wow. My current Mac Pro, cheese grater 2010, was initially $8,000, has been continually upgraded with more RAM, new video card, new CPU, SSD drives, the list goes on, and it has resulted in another $6,000 of additions plus monitors. Total outlay about $16,000. Cheap, he said. You have to remember, I have toys in my lab that range up to $500,000. So $15K more or less is a great deal given the work I do on it. I can't wait to see the specs on it and then go over to the Apple store across the road and load up some number crunching software to do some real comparisons. I figure I'll spend about $10,000 to $15,000 more or less on it without monitors. Love the new Pro Display, but I don't need that kind of resolution. He says, these are pro machines for those of us who do hardcore professional work, number crunching in my case, but video editing, music, etc., just my 2 cents worth. Maurice, thank you very much for that. I knew I'd get some comments from Maurice about this. We've got to keep this stuff in perspective.
Yes.
Yes, it is ridiculously expensive for the average person. The average person who has a MacBook Air not only doesn't need this kind of power, could never use anywhere near this kind of power. You saw the demo when he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tracks loaded up into Logic Pro. It was only using about 75% of its capacity. Even then, he wasn't pushing it to the limit. So yeah, while we might want this machine, the vast majority of us can't use it, and therefore bitching about the price. I would take it more seriously from guys like Maurice if they were bitching about the price.
He's
Guys,
certainly not.
Video editors bitching about the price.
Mm-hmm.
Professional photographers or music editors or those kind of studio people bitching about the price. But guys like me bitching about the price, yeah, I'm going to ignore that.
Yeah, it's not going to stop Pixar from buying them by the truckload or
Utterly
whatever.
pointless. Our friend Scott Thrift, who's flirting with my wife, he's got to stop doing that. Teasing. I've just watched part of the WWDC keynote and have a question regarding the new Apple Music app on the Mac. There is no mention on the website, in the keynote, etc., of whether the new app will still be able to rip CDs. Mr. Wonderful has a huge collection of CDs he wants to transfer over. Okay, first of all, Mr. Wonderful should do that now. Well, it's easier to do it in iTunes. Don't wait. But in Apple Music, you will still be able to rip CDs, so you don't got to worry about that kind of stuff, Scott. That's it for tonight's show. As always, I want to say thanks very much to our good friend Jim Dalrymple for showing up sober, which is always appreciated. Relatively sober. You missed it last week when he was cursing at me, didn't you?
I did.
You really should listen to that because that's funny as hell. Don't forget, if you'd like, you can subscribe to the Your Mac Live Daily, a daily newsletter I send out each morning around 10 a.m. Send me an email if you'd like the subscription information about that, or check it out on my Twitter feed, or where else?
Facebook? No?
Yeah, Facebook. Facebook would do it too. As always, I want to say thanks to you guys, whether you be tuned in live or listening in via the archive. And thanks very much to my lovely wife for her questions and for being here each and every week as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Folks, as always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you were listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!
Bye.